so much, and welcome back to all of you that were with me last week. And if you're new this week, very nice to see you and to meet you. Ari mentioned that this entire month is under the theme of the text demands interpretation. So every time we learn, we're learning not just the words on the page, but we're trying to dig deeper into what we call the white fire underneath the black fire, the white space in between the black letters of the pshat, of the simple text. And that's where all the creativity lies. So if you've been learning in this whole series with Hadar this month, you've certainly been diving into a lot of different ways of approaching Midrash, approaching commentary and interpretation. And tonight we're going to think a little bit about the role that music can play in really trying to get to deeper hidden layers of understanding in the text. So last week, if you were with me, we spent a little bit of time thinking about the highs and lows of the emotional human experience through the lens of two particular narratives in Tanakh, in the Bible. We looked at a scene from the crossing of the Red Sea as found in the book of Exodus, and we looked at Psalm 137 that painted a picture of exile in Babylon. And both of these stories really centered the outpouring of song. So today we're going to look at those same two texts, but this time we're going to look at several different musical interpretations of those texts, both my own and those of my colleagues. And we're going to think a little bit about the ways in which these really serve as midrash, as creative textual commentary that help us not just answer some of our questions, but ask further questions. That's really what the process of learning is all about. It's answering questions and asking what are the next set of questions. So to get us going in our musical midrash study tonight, I'm going to sing a nigun that I shared last week, a wordless melody. I'm going to invite you in the chat to just share any unanswered question you have about any Jewish text. It could be something you've learned in the series so far. It could be anything else you've come across in Torah or in the prayer book, or even beyond text about our tradition. Any question that you have inside about Jewish text, tradition, ritual that piques your curiosity. So I'll sing a little bit and you can go ahead and share in the chat any questions we have. Hiriram bayai, ya ba 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 ba, hiriram bayai, hiriram bam ho, hiriram bayai, ya ba 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 ba, hiriram bayai, hiriram bayo, hiriram mam ayabai, arelaya babo, hiriram mam ayabai, diriraya yo, hiriram mam ayabai. Hiriram oh, hiriram oh, hiriram ayaba, yarelaya oh, hiriram ayaba, iriraya yo, hiriram ayaba. Hiriram ho, hiriram ho, hiriram ho, hiriram ba 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 mo, hiriranayo, hiriram ho, hiriram bayo. Hiriram ba 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 mo. Hiriram na yo. Hiriram bam ho. Hiriram ay ay hiriram yo. Hiriram ay ay Ram ay Hiriram ho Hiriram ho. Great. So I see some beautiful questions in the chat. Some are about ritual practice, some are about music and history, some are about things we see in our texts, right? I see the question, why do we celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday, right? So that's a question that's actually a textual question. That's noticing that Shabbat is named for the seventh day, and yet how did it come to be that this is the seventh day, right? And there are questions here about the Siddur, about prayer. Great. Only good questions. Only good questions. That's what I believe. So I'm not going to answer any of these questions right now, because the process of Midrash is using our own creativity and our own internal drive to fill those burning white spaces. So that's something we're going to do together a little bit. So beautiful. You can throw more questions in if you'd like. This was sort of to get the creative juices flowing. So we're going to open up the source sheet, which I saw the source sheet is in the chat. So go ahead and open it up. Great. And we're going to begin by going back to one of the texts that we looked at last week, and it is right here on the page in case you weren't here. Here we are in the book of Shemot, Exodus chapter 15, verses 20 to 21. Here we have B'nai Israel, the Israelites situated at the edge of the sea. We have here verse 20. Vatikach Miriam haneviyah, achot Aharon et hatov beyada. Miriam the prophetess, Aharon's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her and danced with timbrels. And Miriam chanted for them, "Sing to the Lord, for God has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver God has hurled into the sea." Now, last week, we spent a little bit of time trying to sort of unearth the hidden layers of emotion in this text. And we discussed a little bit the ways in which this text highlighted not just joy, but also some of the internalized pain that the Israelites experienced in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. And thus, this expression of song was one of simultaneous joy and pain and grief. What I'd like to do now is step back and look at these two verses and just ask questions. Just ask questions. Questions that remain unanswered according to the plain text. So go ahead and you can put in the chat, what unanswered questions are there in these two verses? What are the holes in the text that are just kind of like begging for explanation? Like if we had the author of this text sitting here with us, you know, not to name any names of who the author of the Torah is, but if we had the author, if we were at like a book talk with the Torah, with the author of the Torah, and you could like ask clarifying questions, what would you ask about these two verses? So go ahead and put them in the chat. Great. So Susan says, where did the timbrels come from? Great. Not clear in the text. What else do we see here? Why does the Torah why does the Torah here not say that she is also Moshe's sister? Ari is foreshadowing what we're going to discuss. Great. Why is Miriam called a prophetess? Excellent. Totally unclear in this text. Were the words of the song really that short? Great. According to this, the song was just, you know, this line. Great. Why did it take so long for women to be featured? Suzanne, fantastic question. Great. So these are all really excellent questions in the text. And thus comes in the process of Midrash, the process of creative interpretation. So those of you who have been in the series so far may have studied some of the classical Midrashim from the sages, from the rabbis over the generation. But Midrash is a process that does not end. It is a process we are empowered to continue through art and through song. Great, keep throwing them in there. So we're not going to look at this in depth right now, but there is a beautiful Midrash from the Babylonian Talmud, from Masechet Sota, that is directly below the Exodus text, that on your own, you should feel very, very free to peruse. But just to summarize, this beautiful Midrash is addressing exactly Ari's question, which was, why is Miriam here listed as Achot Aharon, Aaron's sister, and not Achot Moshe, Moshe's sister? Now, this Midrash goes ahead and says the reason is because she was already a prophetess before Moses was born. Moses was the little brother, Aaron was the older brother. So it's saying in this first place in the Torah that Miriam is named as a Neviah, as a prophetess. At that point, she was already a prophetess when she was just Achot Aharon. She was already a prophetess when there was not even a Moses. She's a prophetess without even the relationship to Moshe. Thus, she's called Achot Aharon. That's what this Midrash says. Very lovely. Now, the question of why is she a Neviah? Why is she a prophetess? That's another unanswered question here. So we're going to focus on those two specific questions and look at two melodies that sort of dig into those questions. So the first one, to backtrack, we're thinking again about this question of Achot Aharon, the sister of Aaron. Why is Miriam listed that way in this text? So I'm going to audio share a beautiful, beautiful creative melody for these exact two verses. This is a melody by Rabbi Ariel Root Wolpe, one of the artists that will actually be with me at the concert in Los Angeles. And we recorded and released her album with the Rising Song Institute. Hadar produced her album this past summer. And included on the album is this amazing musical midrash on this exact verse. So this song that we're about to listen to, you'll see that the lyrics for it are, if you scroll down, it begins on page 1 and goes on to page 2. The song Vatikach Miriam. And the lyrics we have are Vatikach Miriam Haneviah, Achot Aharon et Tov be'ada. And Miriam the prophetess took the sister of Aharon, took the toph in her hand, took the timbrel in her hand. Vatitzaena kol hanashim acharei betufim uvimcholot. Sorry, and all of the women went after her. Uvnei Israel halchu bayabasha betoch hayam, and the children of Israel went from the dry land into the center of the water. So as we're listening to this song, I'd like you to think about, and you can put it in the chat if you'd like, what do you hear happening in this song that serves as a commentary on this text? So as you listen to the song and you follow along with the lyrics and you hear the way different voices come in different combinations, how does this function as a musical midrash? How does this function as a creative commentary on the text, Vatikach Miriam Haneviah, Achot Aharon et Tov be'ada? And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aharon, took the timbrel in her hand, and the women went after her, and all of B'nai Israel went after. So you can share any reflections you have on that in the chat as we are listening. Oops, sorry, 1 second. Here we go.
Shekhinah, Holy One, place lay songs on our lips, I will rush into the water.
Great. So I see a lot of great observations on what we're hearing. And just like when we ask questions about what we see in a text, we can listen, and we can also ask questions and name what we hear in the sounds. And I see people mentioning dancing, and that hand pan is drips of water. And I'll share that this is, as we said, Joey Weisenberg produced this album, and I recorded and directed the harmonies for this album. And a lot of what we thought about when we were putting this artistic piece together with Ariel was, how can we sort of paint this picture of this journey across the sea being led by Miriam with our voices, and how can we build from the beginning of the text towards the end of the text to sort of answer some of those unanswered questions. So we begin with one singular voice, just the voice of one woman, supposedly Miriam. Vatikach Miriam Hanavia Achot Aharon Atatof Be'ada. Miriam, the prophetess, by herself, the sister of Aharon, one person, took this timbrel in her hand. Then we move on, and those next layers of harmony come in, signaling that she won't be that prophetess, that sister alone for much longer. And then Vatetzeena Kol Hanashim, all of the women followed. The voice of several other women come in. And then we have the next line, Uvnei Yisrael halchu b'yabasha, and all of the Israelites went after her. And at that point, we added in a few men's voices as well to signify a really collective community that went after the women who went after Miriam. So this is an example of musical Midrash. So before we move on, we can maybe pause for if there are any questions or comments about what we're hearing, what we're thinking. And you can put your hand in the chat if you'd like to share, your hand raise.
So while people are posting, just a question. The Torah implies that the song was sung after they had crossed, but the song is changed to imply that the Miriam and the women actually convinced other people to go into the water. Was that an intentional change, or did I miss something in the Torah itself or in this musical midrash?
Well, I mean, if we look at the text itself, right, it says, Vatetza'ena kol hanashim achareha. It says right there in verse 20, and all the women went after her in dance with timbrels, and uvnei Israel halchu b'yabasha. I mean, this all happens in the same narrative. This is just a couple of verses after the initial text that we had last week. It's all part of the same moment of journeying across, and I'm not sure the time was that completely linear, right? And Rosa is noting that Miriam is repeating the same lines that Moshe had said, the Shir Ladonai Kigo Ga'a Sus V'Rochvo Rama Bayam, the same line. So the implication is that perhaps it was simultaneous or non-linear, but that question really could bring its own song of Midrash. Anyone have anything they'd like to say or ask at this time? No pressure.
I think people still want to know what was the instrument that's making the raindrop type sounds. People seem very interested in that.
Yes. So that was a hand pan. Ariel is playing the hand pan on that. A hand pan is like this big, if you've seen it, it literally looks like a wok. It's like this big, deep, shallow, round pan that you play like this, and it makes these incredible sounds. Yeah, thank you, Anita. Yeah, there's the way that the voices join is part of this creative retelling of this moment. Great. So I'm going to share another melody that is a midrash on this text. This text is not in your source sheet, so I think Ari is going to put it into the chat for us. But I foreshadowed this a little bit last week. This was the final song I played in last week's class to sort of get us excited for this week. In the 1980s, an amazing poet and liturgist named Rabbi Leila Goldberner wrote a poem that is sort of answering the question, why is Miriam named as a Neviah? And why is she named a Neviah, a prophetess, at this particular moment? What is she doing in this text that demonstrates her prophecy? And Rabbi Berner's answer to that question was that she is using song as a tool to lead not just across the sea, not just to redemption in the land of Israel, but that ultimately song is a tool to lehagdil zimrat olam, to strengthen the entire world song, and letakein et haolam, to repair the world. That she used the tool of song to actually heal the world and bring on the Mea Yeshua, bring on the waters of redemption. So this is a text. So I see, great, the translation is in the chat, and I'll sing it in Hebrew. And as you listen, great, as you listen, you can, the same questions, what are you hearing? Of course, this is not recorded elaborately yet, although I actually am recording it in LA when I come out to LA with 3 other women. So get excited for that. But right now you're just hearing me sing it. But the same question, how does this sort of function as a midrash on this story, on the question of what does it mean to prophesize through music and song?
Miriam haneviah oz vezimra beyada. Miriam haneviah oz vezimra beyada.
הישועה. מרים תרקוד איתנו להגדיל זמרת עולם. מרים תרקוד איתנו לתקן את העולם. במהרה בימינו היא תביאנו אל מי הישועה. במהרה בימינו היא תביאנו אל מי הישועה.
I feel bad that you can't hear all the clapping. The challenge of this world.
I can see it though. Thank you. So again, I see some nice reflections here. And I just want to add that the poem that Rabbi Berner wrote was originally designed to be sung at Havdalah. Why was it designed to be sung at Havdalah? Well, traditionally we sing Eliyahu Hanavi at the end of Shabbat as part of Havdalah, because part of the Havdalah in some ways is sort of like a consolation prize for Shabbat ending. Traditionally, we don't want Shabbat to end because it's so great, but also because it's a taste of the world to come. And that we know that redemption and that Mashiach, that the Messiah has come when Shabbat doesn't end, when Saturday night comes and Shabbat didn't end. So if we're saying Havdalah, the idea is that, Mashiach didn't come, too bad, let's make Havdalah, it's so beautiful. And we sing to Eliyahu Hanavi, to Elijah the prophet, saying, maybe one day, Bimhera beyamenu, one day Eliyahu Hanavi will come, Mashiach will come. So this line in this text, Bimhera beyamenu, is a direct nod to singing in Eliyahu Hanavi on Saturday night. But instead of saying Bimhera beyamenu in the line of that original text, we say Bimhera beyamenu hi tevienu el mea Yeshua. Soon in our day, she will bring the waters of redemption. So that the Meha Yeshua is a direct nod to this text, that she leads through water to redemption. Lehagdil zimrat olam, to strengthen the world's song with her song. So any questions, comments, thoughts, anything anyone would like to ask or share?
While people are putting their stuff in the chat, just a question on your creative process. So we can use this song, for example. How did you decide that you were going to write a song for this particular poem? And how long did that process take for you?
That is a wonderful question. So the answer to that question involves another little backstory on this text, is that originally when Rabbi Berner wrote this melody, her idea, wrote this text, her idea is that the poetry could fit very neatly into the traditional Eliyahu Hanavi melody. So you may be familiar with Eliyahu Hanavi. So she wrote it so that one could say, Miriam Neviah, Oz vezimra beyada, Miriam tirkod itanu, letakein et haolam. With the idea being that on Saturday night, we should be bringing in Miriam Hanaviah, not just Eliyahu Hanavi, but that we can use the same melody. Now, I love that. I've been singing that for years. But I thought, I want Miriam to have her own melody. I want us to sing Eliyahu Hanavi to his melody, and then I want us to sing Miriam Hanaviah for her melody. So how I like to make Havdalah is I finish with Eliyahu, Bimera ve'amenu yavo eleinu, hi Mashiach ben David, hi Mashiach ben David. Miriam Haneviah Oz ve'zimra be'yadam. So one goes right into the other, but Miriam, let Miriam have her melody. She's her own prophetess. Let's let her have a melody. So that was my process. And in some ways that's Midrash as well, right? So you have the pshat, the plain text in Exodus. You have this poem that was already a Midrash by Rabbi Leila Goldberner, who is layering that onto a completely different Midrash about Elijah the prophet. That's its own Midrash. We can talk about another time. And then you have me, who is saying, I'm taking this Midrash to the next level and giving Miriam her own voice through song.
Thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful. So Dennis says, Miriam has acquired oz, or strength, in order to lagdil, to strengthen, and to letakein, to heal. Beautiful. And we see that oz in the second verse of the same text. Great connection. Beautiful reflections. You can keep sharing in the chat if you want. Great. So we are going to, now that we've had a chance to look at two different musical midrashim on our crossing of the Red Sea narrative, we're going to now transition to our Psalm 137. So if you were with us last week, we studied verses from Psalm 137, this narrative about exile in Babylon and the role that the many multifaceted role that song played. We saw that song took on many different sort of containers for different emotions in this text. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna look at two melodies, one from my musical collaborative universe and one by me. So let's take a look into the source sheet. So scroll down to the, so just to say that there's a couple of other things in the source sheet we're not getting to. There's another melody for the crossing of the sea narrative that is a traditional Indian Iraqi melody that I recorded a number of years ago, but we're not going to do that today. Great. So on the final page, we have Psalm 137. One more time. Al Neharot Bavel, by the rivers of Babylon. Again, as we mentioned last week, one of the most commonly set psalms of all 150 psalms across faith traditions, because this wrenching image of grief and sorrow and loss and remembrance all captured through the lens of song. And we have here the most well-known verse of all is verse 5. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue stick to my palate, if I cease to think of you, if I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour. So that's arguably the most well-known verse of the psalm, and there are many melodies for that. But we're gonna get to that in a minute. But we're gonna start by listening to a melody by Joey Weisenberg for this psalm that he composed in English. And you'll hear that repeated over and over again in this setting is a nigun, is a wordless melody that comes back over and over again. And my question for you as we listen is, what does this melody represent in the context of this musical midrash? If this English song is a midrash on Psalm 137, what does the nigun, the wordless melody that weaves its way through, represent? So we'll listen, share that in the chat. You can also share anything else you want, but that's our sort of discussion question for this one. All right. This is by the Waters of Babylon by Joey Weisenberg.
By the waters of Babylon, we laid our lyres down, laid our lyres down. We sat and cried by the waters of Babylon. We sang no sacred songs, sang no sacred songs. Our tongues were tied. Whoa, oh, 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 If I forget you, Jerusalem, I'll play no more again, play no more again, not one more time. Won't you show me Jerusalem, raised and broken, raised and broken, alone on high. Oh, la 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 la. Na 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 na. By the waters of Babylon, we laid our lyres down, laid our lyres down for a long, long time. Hey, oh, oh, oh. Ah, la, 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 la. Ah, oh, oh. Hey, la, 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 la. Hey, la, 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 la. Hey, la, 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 la. Hey, la, 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 la. Oh, won't you show me Jerusalem, raised and broken, raised and broken, alone on high.
Great. So that was By the Waters of Babylon from our album, our 2017 album by the same name. The album is called By the Waters of Babylon. So that was the title track. That was the Hadar Ensemble's sixth album of Joey's music. So yeah, I saw a lot of mentions both of sadness that was embedded in the song and also some stylistic comments. Country western. It's very Americana. We have a number of songs that are sort of have an Americana sound. That's certainly a style Joey composes in quite often. And this naming of, there's like a vocalizing of pure raw emotion that comes from the nigun. So that that comes between the verses is really captures the multifaceted nature that song plays in the psalm. Beautiful, beautiful reflections. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah. Any thoughts, comments, questions on this?
So in this song, as an example, does Joey write the music, call you guys in, and then you sing it and you maybe evolves a bit when he brings in the group? Or is this something that you're prepared for when you go in there? So he's sent you stuff and you're ready to go. In other words, this is titled Music as Midrash. We're focusing on the Midrash aspect of music, which is awesome. But I want to focus on the collaborative aspect here. So how much collaboration goes into, for example, this song?
It's a great question. So I would say that it's pretty collaborative in that he composes his music, and then the role of us as a band is really to bring it to life with the many different textures that come from harmonies and instrumentation and our relationships with one another and our own musical dispositions that are really necessary to bring songs to life. So I'd say that we all really bring that in the process. And over the years, there's been different levels of how much is spontaneous and how much is fixed and planned in the recording process. Quite a bit is, I'd say there's a healthy balance between when you listen to these records, hearing things that are truly spontaneous and things that are really cultivated and planned, which in some ways also feels a little bit like Midrash. So
I see David has a question. Before he asks his question, just a question about the experience. And when you're singing a song like this in your group, it appears there's a lot of emotion going on in the group, and you're really singing your hearts out. Are you feeling the emotional impact of the song when you're singing it? Or are you really focused more on the harmony and an intellectual experience?
It's an interesting question because I'd say for me, and this is probably true for many musicians that primarily work in improv or collaborative settings, that the focusing on the musical interactive moments is an emotional experience. So it's always, for me, it's pretty consistently that, in that to sort of hear what the others that you're working with are going to do, and you have to be sort of hyper focused on one another, and that's sort of like a highly emotional musical process. And in some ways the texts kind of flow from that starting point.
Great, thank you. So I think David has his hand up. Let me see, we can unmute you. Go ahead, David.
So what I'm noticing from last week and this week is the way that the music really opens up a whole new way of relating to the text. Like the musical midrash, that concept that you've been mentioning over and over, it's really giving me a very viscerally different relationship to text that I may have read 1,000 times. I wonder how much is that part of your mission, intention, kavanah? Is that an intentional part of what you're kind of bringing into the world? musical Midrash.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. I think it's certainly part of my and the whole Rising Song Institute's mission and vision. And really, the Midrash is interpretation, and interpretation is deeply personal. And interpretation always starts from like the place that the person who is doing the interpreting is coming from. So when we have music produced by so many different musicians and artists and songwriters, and even those musicians are collaborating within their music with so many artists and songwriters, it's that many more layers of interpretation that get added to the text, because each person is coming from their own relationship and place, and it builds out so much richness. So that's certainly one of the missions. Thank you, David. It's a great question. Any other questions or comments on this? Great. So I see some other questions in the chat. We'll get to it. I want to share a much newer melody for Psalm 137. This is a very new one of mine. It is very, very much still in process. So, if you have any feedback or ideas, you can let me know. But this is a melody for, if we go back to our source sheet, for verses 5 and 6 of Psalm 137.
Or clapping. I'm just giving you the, play by play.
Great.
So I see in our last minutes we have some questions. One is from Mark Schneider, who loves Makom Bina and wants to know a little bit about the song. It's his all-time favorite. How did it come to be, and what's the message in that song?
Wow. First of all, Mark, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy that song. So that song, Makom Bina, which can be found on my album, it is a setting of 2 verses from Job, chapter 28. And I will say there are not like so many Job songs out there. So certainly not upbeat Job songs. And this might be the only upbeat Job song in the world, maybe. I'd be delighted if I was wrong. But essentially that song is, there are 2 verses that can be found in some sidurim that go by the Sephardi custom for slichot, for the sections of liturgy often found around the high holidays. And this verse sort of juxtaposes chokhmah and bina, wisdom and understanding, which may seem like synonyms, but they're quite different. So I was really called to those verses, and actually composed it when I was invited to write a new song for the month of Elul, and I was really called to those 2 lines from the Slichot liturgy. So that's the story behind that.
Cool. So you're going to be in concert coming up with some people I've heard of and some people I don't. Can you tell us a little bit about the people you'll be singing with, so we all know, know who these people are? I mean, we should know them, I assume, if they're singing with you, but some of them may be newer on the scene.
Great. These are all such wonderful musicians and friends and collaborators. So we have Rabbi Yosef Goldman, who is a longtime singer in the Hadar Ensemble. He sings Shochein Ad and many of Joey's beautiful songs. Has a beautiful album of his own music called Open My Heart, and has been part of the Rising Song team for a long time. Then we have Rabbi Ariel Ruolpi, whose beautiful Vatikach Miriam we listened to today. And her album we just released on Rising Song Records, the Hadar's record label, just this past summer. Rabbi Josh Rashofsky is a really prolific composer and rabbi who has released several albums of beautiful music. I sing on his records as well. He just released a great new album. Chava Morel and Alana Arian are both really wonderful spiritual leaders and songwriters. And I have a collaborative trio project with them called New Moon Rising. You can check us out at newmoonrising.com. They're both just wonderful composers and musicians. And Rabbi Micah Shapiro, another amazing composer, collaborated and studied with the Rising Song Institute as well. I just recorded on his album that will be out in a few months. A lot of really beautiful music. So the 7 of us together will have a good time, and I hope you'll join us.
Great. And then when is your next album coming out?
When is my next album coming out? Well, I have my next, I'll be releasing a single. I'll be releasing Miriam Hanavia that I just played for you as a single in the spring. And then I am, my next full-length album will be at some point in the next couple of years.
Great. And then Lloyd Abrams asks, he's just confirming that the concert will be streamed for those who can't attend in person.
Yes, absolutely. Outdoor in person and also streamed.
Awesome. Well, thank you. What a terrific class today on the music as Midrash. I think you landed it. You did exactly what what was headlined as you would talk about. So you put us all in the mode to look at music maybe in a different way and to re-listen to some of this music and your music as well. I'll share in a follow-up some links to your music and links to the other people's music, as well as information about the concert. And yeah, we're wishing you luck. We don't know where you're going to land up yet. So I think you're going to announce sometime soon where you'll be next year, right?
Yes, you'll hear soon.
People have asking me. They keep asking me, and I said, I don't know. I really have no idea. So yes, we don't. Maybe you'll be on the West Coast. We have no idea. I don't know. You have a straight face, so I can't. I won't ask. I will
Well,
not ask.
I'm certainly looking forward to being on the West Coast in just
Okay.
2 weeks. So,
Okay.
but
Well, we'll take that.
Ari, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for being on the learning journey. And I wish you a lot of strength in your continued learning until we get to learn again together.
Thank you so much. See you on the West Coast. Everybody
Bye.
else, either go to bed or go to dinner. Take care. Be safe. Bye.